Hey guys, Chris Carrino with you, Voice of the Nets podcast. And today our guest will be a very special member of the Nets family, Jason Collins. His rookie year with the Nets was my first year as the radio voice of the Nets. Nets went all the way to the NBA Finals. And we'll talk about the things that made that team special, how a guy like Jason Collins was able to be a starter for a really good team for so long, and the guy never averaged more than 7 points or 6.5 rebounds a game. You've got to be really good at all the other stuff. Jason Collins was always kind of like a polarizing figure, and I don't mean anything in his personal life when he came out later on as a gay man, and we'll talk about that and how he came to that decision and what that has meant and what that's meant for so many others. But just his game was polarizing. I mean, I remember being on a road trip in the early 2000s at some point, and we were at a nice steakhouse in Portland, Oregon, El Gaucho. We had a room in the back, and there was a big group. And, you're in the middle of a long road trip and in the middle of a long season, and guys can get a little tired of each other, maybe a little testy at times. And there was an argument between two people about Jason Collins, and they almost came to blows over Jason Collins and how important he was to the Nets. Because on some level, here was a guy who, as we mentioned, never averaged more than 6.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, not athletic. And you're saying, well, why is he out there? Why is he starting? And then you have the other side will be like, well, if you know basketball at all, you know that he does the things that help you win. And if Jason Kidd didn't think that Jason Collins could help him win basketball games, he would not be a starter for as many years as he was on a really good Nets team. I always am reminded of a great quote when it comes to Jason Collins. Not his quote, but a quote that everybody's familiar with is, "Don't mistake kindness with weakness." That is so apropos of Jason Collins. He was as tough a player as they come, but he was as kind a player and as kind a man as you'll ever meet. And I really do firmly believe that people are put on this earth for certain reasons, and they find themselves in certain situations because it's going to help people, and they're meant to be there. And when Jason Collins' career started coming to an end, and he came out with his story that he was gay, it really made an impact on people. And whatever side of the issue you may fall on, you can't deny that he has helped people in this world. And he is a special person. He was part of a special team. And I can't think of a person, a subject for me to interview here on the Voice of the Nets podcast that deals with all the things that we want to talk about. We have not only talk about Nets history, we talk about Nets current situation a little bit. We touch on it. We don't get into it a lot. It'll imply what the Nets need to do in the future. We get into his personal story of someone who had to make a courageous decision in order to help other people. We talk entertainment because you're going to be amazed at a guy he played high school basketball with on his team that is probably more famous than he is. So all that's coming up. This is the Voice of the Nets podcast with me, Chris Carrino. And in a moment here, you can hear the voice of Jason Collins. It is always such a pleasure when I'm at Barclays Center and somebody taps me on my shoulder in my perch where we do the games from, and I turn around and to see a smiling face that is welcoming and that I enjoy seeing. And this happened to me late in the year. Get the little tap on the shoulder, turn around, and there's the great Jason Collins and that great smile. And it's always so great to see you, Jason. You were there for Pride Night, and we're going to get into, you give out the Courage Award that is named after you. But it's so pleasant to turn around and see you smiling. I can imagine, though, if I was on the court sometime in the early 2000s wearing the opposing colors of the Nets and turn and see you right next to me, it probably means I'm getting laid out by a screen.
Yeah, you won't see that. You'll see the mouthpiece and like an evil smile coming at you. There's nothing better than like blindsiding someone on a basketball court and setting a good pick. Obviously you don't want it to be a dirty play, but within the confines of the game, I used to, when I was teammates with Kyle Lowry in Memphis, because we were always on the second team.
Yeah. And at that point in your career, which is interesting because you were sort of coming down, he had not yet ascended up yet.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah.
But I saw like how special a player he was. But Mike Conley used to love to pick him up full court. And you can imagine the battles that Kyle Lowry and Mike Conley had in practice. Oh. And I said to Kyle, I can get you open just when he's, so I set a couple blindside picks on Mike just to free up Kyle. And the coach, Mark Ivoroni, came up to me after practice and said, Jason, I love what you're doing, but you can't do that to our players in practice.
Not the star, not Mike Conley.
But I was one of those guys that I took pleasure because it reminded me of my rookie year with the Nets and being on that second team in practice. And we would challenge those guys every single day. And I know that it makes the team better when the second unit is hungry and is scrappy.
Yeah, but you also knew better probably not to lay Jason Kidd out with a screen in practice.
Well, Jason Kidd, was also he knew to keep his head on a swivel. Mike Conley was sort of like locked into to Kyle, and I was like, oh, I got a way to free you up.
They with you around, they had to put the red shirt like the red jersey they do with quarterbacks. Don't hit them. Well, it goes back. You were a guy who, you played 13 years in the league. You were part of, I think, 7 seasons with the Nets, and you were a full-time starter after your rookie year. I mean, you got a chance to start at one point in your rookie year. You started 9 games your rookie year, but after that, I mean, you were an every game starter for a really good team that went to the playoffs every year, and you never averaged more than 6.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. I mean, there is something to be said for what you brought to the team and things like that, screening. How many rebounds you probably got for Jay Kidd just because you blocked out and allowed him to get the rebound and run and got the transition game going, right? I mean,
yes.
At what point did you realize, because I'm sure in high school and in college, you were a star player, you were looked upon to score and things like that. At what point did you realize, hey, this is how I'm going to have a long career, do the little things?
Well, pretty quickly, in that first practice, going up against, great players, and I really looked to Aaron Williams.
A-Train.
Yeah, A-Train, who was a solid veteran, big man, backup center. And I was looking more towards, okay, how can I play? Because he's, at that point, I think he was 11 or 12 years in the league. Like he had played in the NBA for over a decade.
Yeah.
So I really looked to, okay, what was he doing? Because my goal was to play in the NBA for 10 years, for at least a decade. I didn't want like a cup of coffee and then, on to the next thing. I wanted to play. And so I saw like he did a lot of little things. He was one of those guys who really showed up early and got into the weight room. He was a workout fiend. He was one of those guys who, warms up with 225 on the bench press. A very strong guy. But he always did just a bunch of the little things. And I said to myself, well, I can do that. When we have scorers, like every team, there's that saying, like, be a star in your role. Mm-hmm. And every team needs role players. So be that star role player. And so I was like, okay, I can, like, I pick up game plans very quickly. I can see people's patterns and their tendencies. So I can anticipate what play is happening or where they're going to go. So it started for me on defense. Like we had a lot of scorers. We had a lot of guys who could get on the break and run. And I was like, okay, I can rebound. I can execute a game plan. I can earn the coach's trust. And I took it on a challenge to, also, I loved going up against the best. Even when I was in middle school, I loved playing up against older people. Yes, it sucked in the beginning because they were bigger and stronger, but it was something that my dad, in our pickup games, he would always make us play up and play against. When we were 14 years old, we were playing against adults. And I love that challenge. So when you get to the NBA, you're going up against the best of the best. And, so I love going up against Shaq and Yao Ming and, you name it. Those were the ones that I really, got up for. When you're playing someone who you don't really know, it's like,
yeah. Well,
I'm going up against a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. How big were you at 14?
14 is probably what, 8th grade?
Yeah, going into high
so
school.
I was around 6'6". So yeah, I was a size
you were
of
a man.
Yeah, and I was dunking the ball. So and all that.
Have you ever got a chance to take one of my favorite things on the internet is people being made to look really small by Yao Ming? Have you ever taken a picture with Yao?
Yes, I have a couple pictures with him.
He probably makes you look like the average height person.
Well, it's funny to me is that I always look down at people, so I'm just naturally trained to like. But Yao is the one person that I really have to look up to.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, so this is how the rest of the world is like doing me. And I was like, I'm using like neck muscles like I just do not use. I'm like, hey, Yao, how's it going? Like, have a conversation.
This morning, somebody put it out on Twitter this morning at some point, a picture of Yao Ming with Shaq and Kevin Hart. And it's like Shaq, who is the most enormous person anyone will ever come across in their everyday life. Yeah. And it would probably make you look kind of small. And he is dwarfed by Yao Ming. And then Kevin Hart's like basically like it looks like he's photoshopped in. It looked like they and you bring up, so let's go back for a minute now. So we're recording this going into Labor Day weekend. This will actually be out right after Labor Day, 2022. Do you remember what you were doing exactly 20 years ago this week?
Wait, Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. What did I say?
You said Labor Day.
Labor Day. I'm already skipping the summer.
You're already skipping summer. Come on. It's gonna
I'm already looking forward. But basketball season ended too abruptly for me, Jason. I'm just wishing it back again.
That it did.
So yeah, Memorial Day weekend, 20 years ago. Do you remember where you were?
I believe I was in Boston or playing against the Celtics in that series, in that legendary series where we blew I think it was 24-point lead or something in the fourth quarter.
I think it was 26 in the game. It was 21 going into the fourth quarter. That was game 3, and that was the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. That was my first year as the full-time radio voice of the Nets. It was your rookie year. That was such an eventful playoffs. I mean, between game 5 in the Indiana series in that first round, and then the Charlotte series where Jason, gets his head split open and then shows up 2 days later, gets a triple-double, and then you're in the conference finals against the Celtics, and it's 1-1. It's game 3. You guys had that 21-point lead going to the fourth quarter, and they just destroy you in the fourth quarter. It's that if anybody was watching, the Nets series in Boston or this Eastern Conference final against Miami, game 4, how loud it can get there, and they just will that team, and that team feeds off it. What do you remember about that game, that series, and how that kind of, even that loss kind of turned things around for you guys in that series?
Well, I remember a couple of things. The first thing, it wasn't just loud. Like they would they would throw coins at us on the bench. Like it crossed some lines of like personal safety.
Yeah, it's a danger. Yeah.
And I remember Leroy, our security guard.
Leroy Marshall.
Leroy, one of the best in the business.
Nicest man.
Dude. Yeah. And we said, Leroy, they're throwing, coins at us. And he said, well, you better duck. You couldn't tell where they were coming from. And so I remember that. I remember, after that game, listening to, I think it was ESPN, and they had Dr. Jack Ramsey. And he was like, it's over. The series is over. No team can come back. So they were already throwing dirt on us. And I remember the day after, at the team meeting, we watched the video, and everybody just sort of had a sense. We were angry, but also we knew that we put ourselves in a position to win, and we sort of just let go of the rope. And so we were like, okay, when we get in that position again, we know what to do. We just got to keep grinding away and be ready for that punch. And I think watching basketball just over the years, it's a game of runs, and that especially on their home court, they're gonna make a run at you. Well, unless you're Phoenix Suns, but usually the home team on their home court, a big game, is gonna make a run at you, and you just have to withstand it and then just keep grinding away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we were able to bounce back.
Well, I remember the day after, I think Byron Scott met the media in the hotel.
Yeah.
And I remember just being outside a ballroom there at the old Boston Harbor Hotel in Boston. And the reporters were saying, "Oh, Byron, like, were you able to get any sleep?" And, Byron was always nothing ever fazed Byron. And he would be like, "Yeah, I got a good 8 hours last night." And everybody was like, wow. And there was a calmness about the team. And I know it stemmed not just from Byron. How much did Jason Kidd play into that? Looking to him for leadership in that moment. Just another reminder of what he had done for you guys all season long.
Well, J. Kidd, it's funny because there's some players that you're playing alongside of, and you're like, that's a Hall of Famer. Like, even in that moment, that he's a Hall of Famer. Like, and he was never one of those guys who's like a big, loud, yelling, screaming kind of leader. It's one of those things when he spoke, he said what needed to be said in the moment, and everybody just feeds off of that. And you feed off of his intensity, his playmaking ability. I mean, obviously, every time he makes everyone on the court better just by being out there on both ends of the court. So there's that confidence that you have when you're playing against a guy that is arguably the MVP in the league, kind of confidence. So it instills that that sense of belief that our team has Jason Kidd and their team doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to know. I think Scal. I was talking to Brian Scalabrine a few weeks ago, and he said we were talking about that game, and he said, "Yeah, J. Kidd walked in the locker room and said, I'm never losing to these guys again."
Yeah.
And you're like, all right. Yeah. Who we'd argue?
Yeah, no, right? Exactly. You just follow J. Kidd's lead.
And he started out, I mean, that year, you guys had won, the Nets had won 26 games the previous season. And they trade Marbury for Kidd. Mm-hmm. And Kidd comes in. Do you remember, you're a rookie. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what it was first like when you met him? Because there was a story about how like the team dinner in training camp, like he just basically said, like, we're not like this team doesn't lose anymore. I'm here. We're not losing anymore. Do you remember what it was like to first experience that with him? Well,
I was very fortunate in growing up in California that we actually played for the same AAU basketball team, but obviously different divisions, years apart. But I remember Las Vegas. I was playing 12 and under, ARC Mid-Valley. That was the name of the AAU team. And our head coach said, "Hey, the high school ARC Mid-Valley team is playing, and they have these really good players, Cherokee Parks, and then this point guard out of the Bay Area named Jason Kidd. You want to go see him and meet him?" So as a 12-year-old kid, I'm like, sure, I'll go watch it. And then that was the first time I'd ever seen a point guard like that in person, other than Magic Johnson, who was just so fast and athletic. Like back then, like he was doing reverse dunks and everything.
Yeah, he was the best.
Yeah, super athletic.
And he was like the first high school guy that they would sell out arenas. Like he would play at the Oakland Arena where the Warriors would play, and he was a high school guy, and he would sell out the place. And there was a lot of talk of him going straight to the NBA, I think, at one point.
Well, he's that McDonald's All-American game that it's a heck of a squad. That his year. So I got to meet him before then. So when I met up with him again, and I had a little bit actually experience with this as far as going into my high school team the year before I went to Harvard Westlake High School in Los Angeles.
Mm.
The year before I got there alongside my brother, the team, I think, won 5 games.
Yeah. And then they got 7-foot twins.
Then you get
having
7-foot freshman twins coming in.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, we're used to winning. Like, so we had a little bit of experience as far as coming in, setting the culture, changing the identity. So when J Kidd, a lot of us came from winning program. Richard Jefferson, the same at University of Arizona. And then Kmart, he really didn't play that much his freshman year because of I think he had a lower leg or ankle injury.
Yeah, he had a couple injuries in college.
He had a lot of winning in Cincinnati. So there are a lot of guys who were used to winning. And that helps when you're trying to change the culture. Yeah. And then obviously you add to that J Kidd and the experience that Byron Scott had. And it was just, everything, the puzzle pieces all fit together.
Were you a Laker fan growing up?
Oh, of course. Yeah, growing up in Los Angeles. Yeah, well, I used to go to LA Laker games. My parents used to split tickets with another family. And that family, they were cousins with the LA Laker named Orlando Woolridge. And so we would go over to Orlando Woolridge's house when they would have parties, and guys from the Lakers were there. And again, so I knew Byron Scott since I was in middle school because from those parties. So when I get drafted and then seeing Anita, his wife at the time, and she knew my mom, so it was just like it's really small world kind of thing.
And then you're a rookie and you end up in the NBA Finals in LA.
Yes,
against the Lakers. I mean, that's got to be a pinch me kind of thing.
I mean, there's all kind of serendipity that happens in the world, and obviously also my first game back in the NBA after making my announcement is against LA Lakers.
That's right.
In Los Angeles.
We're going to get to that stuff a little later on, but that finals, I always thought, even as a broadcaster, it was my first year in the league as the full-time radio voice, the first time I'm doing playoff games and everything. And here we are, still the most memorable games in my career are during that playoff run. And I just remember the finals, everything was different. You walked in there, it was just a circus. It just felt like a fish out of water. I felt like we were sort of visitors. We obviously were visitors at Staples Center, but I was like, wow, like you talk about happy to be here kind of thing. It was almost like that. And I never thought, with all respect, I never thought you guys had a chance, against the Lakers that year. They were going for the three-peat with Shaq and Kobe. And just to know how different it was and how intimidating the environment was. Did you feel that way the first year?
No, I was a little fortunate that my college team had been to the Final Four. Okay. And I think, honestly, the Final Four was a little bit bigger than the NBA Finals.
Yeah, for a moment, you're playing in a dome and,
you're in all, you're playing and it was in the Alamo Dome, which is massive in San Antonio. And so the sightlines, unfortunately, I wasn't able to play, but I was able to go through that experience and support my teammates.
Yeah.
So I think going through that experience helped. I know RJ also, going to Final Four. So we had guys who had been in, big games, I guess, and big stages in the past. So I guess for me personally, it wasn't that big. The scene wasn't that big. The thing that was that big was freaking Shaq.
Yeah,
the big,
it didn't help.
Thing that we couldn't obstacle that we couldn't overcome.
I remember the night before Game 1. I'm out to dinner in LA with Bill Raftery, Ian Eagle, like a bunch of people from the Nets, and Todd McCullough was with us. And Todd was on that team. He was a center, and I remember Raph just yelling down to the end of the table, Todd, "Hey Todd, better get another steak. You got to guard Shaq tomorrow." and I'm like, it hits me like, wow, this guy's got to guard Shaq in the finals tomorrow. I mean, that was just a daunting task.
I mean, for anyone. I mean, Shaq in his prime, is just a whole nother level of. There's no player in the NBA right now who is like him. Joel Embiid, as talented as he is, yes, he can shoot it better than Shaq can, but he's not strong. I mean, Shaq makes Joel Embiid look small.
Well, now, so you're going now to the second time you go to the finals, the second year.
Yeah.
But I remember Brian McIntyre, a longtime PR guy for the NBA, coming up to me in the first finals and being like, I was the youngest broadcaster in the league and I'm getting to do the finals. And he's like, hey, some guys, they're in this business 30, 40 years, never get to do these kind of games. Don't take it for granted. And I'm like, I always remember that. And I'm like, the next year we go back and I go, Brian, I want you to know I'm still not taking it for granted, But the second time, it was a lot more comfortable. It was a lot more, all right, here we are. We know what to expect. And I felt like the team felt like that. Did you guys think you had a chance? I mean,
definitely.
Against San Antonio?
Yes, definitely. And that year, or that playoffs, I think that was the year that we won. We swept, I think it was the conference finals and the
you guys
round right before that.
You won 10 straight playoff games that year.
Yeah. So you're going into the finals as hot as possibly, as you can, with a lot of confidence. So, I mean, you can see that in this year's, with the Golden State Warriors, if they were to go into the, finals and, you would expect that they have a good shot. So that's how we felt, that we had a very good shot of winning that series.
Yeah. And I feel like, you played a bigger role in that series, obviously, in that you're now become more a regular starter on that team. Dikembe Mutombo had come in and was expected to maybe make more of an impact that year than he did, but then kind of was out of the rotation, and then all of a sudden in the Spurs series, you needed him.
Yeah, we definitely could have used him, but he had a really bad wrist injury, and I think it was also on his shooting hand. So, not that you're asking Dikembe to shoot that much anyways, but still, you're going to need your wrist when you're playing basketball. So.
Yeah, but he had an impact. He had a bit of an impact in that finals. They had David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and it was like he did play through it. I'm sure you obviously knew Dikembe when you were younger, growing up. Like, do you remember any sort of interaction or anything that you gleamed off of Dikembe as a player, as a man? In that year playing with him?
I mean, Dikembe is such a great human being, period. And then you add on top of that, his basketball ability, and he's an incredible ambassador for our sport, for our game, for the league. As a teammate, he had no fear. There are some guys, when someone's driving to the basket, like a high flyer, like a LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, you name it, that when they have a head of steam and you're supposed to, be the shot blocker or go over and take the charge or, whatever, they're going to, they will see them, pretend that they don't see them, and don't rotate over. They don't want to be put on a poster.
No.
And Dikembe wasn't afraid to get put on a poster. He would go over every single time. And that, I sort of took that, from him, and but I would try to go foul him. I'm not gonna, but Dikembe had no fear. He really, defense. He was all about going to try to block that shot. And nothing's better than Dikembe getting the block and doing the finger wave.
Yeah, that and I think about that, what you learn, and that has it's kind of a correlation to what you go through later in life, not having fear to make the courageous decision that you did. And I want to get to that in a second, but let me put a pin in that right now and just come back again. You talk about guys not wanting to, you weren't afraid a guy to dunk on you, but you might foul him.
Yeah.
We all know the Nick rivalry over the years. 2004 now, in Game 3, the Tim Thomas where you lay him out.
Unfortunate.
I know, and I know what a nice person, a kind person you are, and I know you probably felt bad about it in a way. But what I thought was interesting about it was afterwards he goes after Kenyon, basically, right? You were the guy who hit him, but he maybe thought Kenyon did it. So now the next day he's calling Kenyon a fugazi tough guy.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
And basketball world, it's a small world. So I've been playing, the first time I played against Tim was in high school, my junior year of high school, his senior year. So we've known each other for years. And he drove to the basket. I, tried to contest the shot, like I normally do. And he was just too high. And, just the arm angle. And it was just a really unfortunate play.
Yeah, I watched it again. In preparing for this, I actually did watch it again. And I mean, it was just a basketball play. I mean, there wasn't anything dirty about it.
Yeah.
Just the way he fell.
And unfortunately, when someone is, off, you're up in the air and you get hit, sometimes you get, completely thrown off balance and there's going to be a hard fall. Thankfully, he was able, career to go on, and recover.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where, afterwards with him and Kmart, I think Kmart was also just, he had my back, all of us had each other's backs.
Yeah.
And he knew that what I did was for the benefit of the team, and that every time, now that, a Nick goes down to the lane, they're looking for me or they're looking for Kmart, but, as opposed to just attacking the basket because, they're bracing for either, for contact. And when you are, playing against an opponent, you want to put that sense of not necessarily fear, but you want them to be aware that when you go into the paint, there's going to be
you got to brace yourself. Not that you're going to be going to be the Pistons bad boys anymore. I mean, I don't think we want to go back to that thing in the NBA, and certainly it's a little called a little tighter now. There's a little more freedom of movement. Definitely,
I don't think I got ejected for that play.
I think you got a flagrant one.
I was a flagrant one, yeah.
Probably would have got thrown out today.
I would have been, hit the showers, kid.
Do you think when you look at the game today, how would you have done today? Like, would you have had to stretch the floor, maybe develop, step out behind the 3-point line?
I think a guy that I would look a lot like is Kevon Looney for the Warriors.
All right, just coming off a 20-point game in the conference finals.
Yeah, but a lot of that was just layups off of guys overhelping because he had great shooters around him, and I think that's sort of the player because he doesn't play above the rim necessarily. Yes, I mean I would dunk the basketball. Same with him, but he does so many little things to help that team win. One of the great things that he does is he's a great on-ball defender. And I think that was one of the things that helped me was that I was quick enough and also, smart enough, like new tendencies players that I could, if there was a switch or if I was showing and I was, momentarily on the, whoever the scorer was, that it wasn't going to be an immediate blow by or, it was going to be a contested jump shot. So I think a player like that is, how I would have, tweaked my game a little bit.
Well, now in today's game, everything's about switching and being able, they'll pick on a guy they feel like they can get a good matchup and get a screen and roll and just sort of, match up. And we saw the Nets struggle with that in the first round against the Celtics. Celtics had a bunch of, light-bodied, switchable guys. And they also had a toughness. Those teams that you played on in the early 2000s, you mentioned a bunch of guys already today. Yourself, Aaron Williams, Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson, Jason Kidd. It wasn't a bad boys intimidating kind of thing, but there was a quiet toughness.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like you need that to be a championship team.
Oh, you definitely have to enjoy playing defense. Like you can't, I won't name names, but if you're watching the playoffs, you see that there are certain guys who are great scorers, but in the playoffs, they're being made to defend. And they're looking for help. They're over there. Where's the help coming for? And like, I personally would love playing in today's because you got to take the challenge and you got to defend. And I love I guess that goes back to what I said at the beginning is that I love going up against the best. I love that challenge. So in today's NBA, yeah, as you just said, it's all about matchups, and they're looking for switches. And when they find it, they're going to exploit it, and you're going to have to, buckle down and defend, or the coach is going to have to take you out of the game.
Yeah.
I don't care how many threes or shots if you.
No, you got to find a way, and you got to find, like you did. And I think what stood out about your Nets career is that you found a way to stay in that lineup and be a contributor for, a long time as a starter. And because you had Jason Kidd, who recognized that you did the things that the team needed.
Oh, yeah.
And so you mentioned, going in practice sometimes and how it can be tough. So you mentioned your high school, Harvard Westlake High School in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Is it true that you had a teammate, a backup, Jason Segel, who was the actor?
It is true.
So,
yes.
so how is he to go up against in practice?
Oh, I would dunk on him all the time. But he was funny. We had a great team. We have the school is, very, it's a very college prep school.
Yeah.
Jason Segel,
And for those who don't know, Jason Segel is the actor who was in How I Met Your Mother, and he did Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Yes. And recently now, so you mentioned you're a Laker fan. He played Paul Westhead, the coach of the Lakers, in the Showtime series that was just out about the Lakers.
Oh, okay.
Winning Time. Okay, yeah, you haven't seen that, but he plays a basketball coach. Which is, I would recommend, so you haven't seen it, so I would recommend it, but I don't think people should watch it as a documentary.
Okay.
There's definitely the way a lot of real people are portrayed. I know Jerry West is really upset about the way he was portrayed in it.
Oh, it's that show. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Kareem, and they were kind of upset about it. So I think everybody should take it with a grain of salt. Look at it as entertainment, and then maybe go back and look at some of the factual stuff. But no. So Jason Segel was he's Paul Westhead.
Yeah. Well, and also in high school, he won a dunk contest in that tournament against Tim Thomas. And Tim's.
Wow, look how we bring it all the way around full circle.
Tim Thomas and his teammate. I think his name is Kevin Freeman, who went. I think he played at UConn. So he played against in a dunk contest against other Division I, obviously future NBA players, and he won because he knew how to bring that X factor, the entertainment.
He was theatrical.
Yeah, he's an actor, so he knew how to bring the entertainment.
Well, and sometimes, and he's tall, right? He's pretty tall.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah, he's around 6'4", give or take.
And I remember somebody asked Jack Nicholson about if he was going to put Kobe Bryant in a movie, and he was like, too tall, he goes, so many actors are so short, they don't want to have too many people that are too tall. So it's funny because Jason Collins, had this career where you did a lot of winning and you were an important player, and yet you were sort of an under the radar kind of guy, the real purists appreciated you, and you weren't doing anything that stood out in terms of calling attention to yourself a lot of times. And what ends up becoming ironic is now you get to the end of your career and you tell the world that you're gay. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like all of a sudden you went from being sort of under the radar to now you are one of the biggest stories in the world. What was that experience like for you?
Part also of me trying to do the little things was actually intentional not to score, because I knew that those people in the media who don't necessarily know the sport of basketball, they will just look at, okay, who's the leading scorer, and then let's go talk to that person. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I don't really want that media attention because I knew that I was gay, and just like I didn't want to bring added attention to myself.
Even early in your career,
even early on in my career, I knew that I didn't want added media attention. Huh. But as you said, the basketball purists knew that I was still making plays to help the team win. And something funny. So my brother was playing for the Utah Jazz.
Your twin brother, Jaren. Yeah.
Yes. Twin brother, Jaren's playing for the Utah Jazz. So he's playing alongside Karl Malone and John Stockton. and legendary coach Jerry Sloan. And Jerry Sloan said to my brother, he's like, I was watching can I curse on this podcast?
We bleep it out.
Okay, you can bleep it out.
You're going to do Jerry Sloan. You got to curse.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, Jerry Sloan, he was a colorful character. So I use
and you probably can. I'll ask TD, my producer. You can curse, right? On iHeartRadio podcast.
You can bleep it out. But he said to my brother, he said, I was watching the Nets play, and your brother didn't score one basket, but that son bitch helped that team win the game. And it was like he was complimenting, and he knew that because I think in that particular game, I remember that game in that I took like back-to-back charges in a possession. There's just, and all of it was just hustle. And so I appreciated that the basketball purists, and it was like a really sign of respect, like an honor that Jerry Sloan recognized and said something to my brother about how I was helping my team play, win.
It's funny. I digress. I'll just interrupt for a second, but I think I mentioned this briefly at the top. I once was at a dinner on the road where two guys in our traveling party almost came to blows, arguing over your effectiveness. Like defending you to a point like you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know basketball if you think that he's not important to this team and all that. So that's the kind of feelings that it did create. But I thought it was really interesting that you. So this was something that early in your career was on your mind to a point where you almost didn't want to be too much of a star because you might have to confront this.
Exactly. So. I always worked on having a good plus minus, I guess.
That wasn't gonna get you State Farm commercials.
No, it wasn't, but it was gonna keep me in the NBA for a decade.
So I can't. So that's. I mean, your decision to come forward and talk about it, and what it's probably done for you in your personal life. I mean, I know it brings with it a certain amount of scrutiny and attention that you were never comfortable with, but at the same time, it's like you don't have to hide it anymore.
Yeah.
Like that had to be so freeing for you.
Oh, definitely. And it was. Look, it's not easy. It's very difficult because not only are you trying to sort of hide a part of your game, but you're also hiding a part of yourself in the locker room. I mean, obviously, you're worried about like you walk around with a constant filter, and you're saying, okay, don't say this, don't talk about this. You don't want to give any clue to anyone that you might be gay. So it's a lot of stress, a lot of energy that is being devoted to something, to trying to keep this secret. And it was very difficult. But I did reach a point in my life that I started coming out to people because of the NBA lockout in 2011. Where whenever you're dealing with something like very stressful, sometimes you find outlets like that to release the stress. And for me, it was basketball. Just focus on basketball and don't worry about that giant elephant in the room kind of thing. And just focus on basketball, do your job.
Yeah.
But when I couldn't do my job and I had that disruption in the timing, I was sort of forced to look at the elephant in the room and say, okay, we got to do something about this. And that's the impetus for me to start coming out to people, friends, family, people that I trusted. And then, ultimately got to the point where when I got traded from the Celtics to the Washington Wizards in 2013, that I called my agent, Arn Tellem, and said, I need to tell you something. And so I came out to him and I said, okay, do we make this announcement? And I wanted to come out. And like, I was tired.
You're ready. You made the decision in your mind.
Yeah. And I said, Arn, but I want you to be the quarterback of this decision-making process. So you tell me whether I can make the announcement now while I'm playing for the Wizards, or do we wait until the season is over and then I'll be a free agent and then, and we make the announcement. You tell me how to do it. And he was the one who sort of came up for the game plan, and that we waited until that season was over. and then came out beginning of May 2013.
But and then when you were with, I think it was when you were with Boston, and then again with Washington, you started wearing number 98. And I know that was and I know that was about Matthew Shepard, who was a gay man who was murdered.
College age kid. Yeah, he was a college kid. He was a college kid. He was murdered in Wyoming in 1998.
So that's why you started wearing 98 to honor him. Now, did anybody ever? So that was sort of a subtle way of you starting.
Oh, yeah, that was hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. Like, did anybody ever ask you, like, why 98?
Yeah, and I had a nice cover story for that. In that, I did 1 year lead the league in fouls. And, I told the Celtics that I wanted the 98 because when the refs call foul on you, they have to go to the scores table and do the whole thing with their
98 would be the worst number.
Yes. Yeah. So I said that was the reason, but my family and friends knew the real reason was to honor Matthew Shepard, and then also the Trevor Project was also founded in 1998, which is a suicide prevention organization for that helps LGBT youth.
Yes, and they do tremendous work. I know when Carl Nassib came out, he'd made a $100,000 donation to the Trevor Project. You were the first active gay player in men's, the top 4 sports there, and then Carl came out with the NFL. And, you talked about what he meant when he did it. I mean, obviously the NFL, it's almost another level when it comes to that masculinity and how it might be perceived. What was your, have you had discussions with Carl? What was sort of that conversation?
I've spoken to him through social media, not a face-to-face or a phone, but just, texting. But it was interesting because I'm in contact with a few other closeted NFL players. So I was out for the day, whenever that day that he made his announcement, and all I heard, I got a text from someone who said that an NFL player just came out, and in my mind, I'm like, well, which one?
One of the ones you knew, yeah,
because he's not the only one, and it's interesting because I'm not the only one. He's not the only one. Like there are others in all of the sports. I mean, let's be honest, in all of the. But for whatever reason, each person is on their own path and just, waiting. But I'm so proud that he did make that announcement, that he was able to, help his team. The Raiders, lost in the playoffs to the, eventual AFC champions in the Cincinnati Bengals. But, he had a great year for the Raiders. So
is it when you speak to players who are, as you mentioned, closeted, I mean, I know conditions are probably different now than they were even in 2014 when you came out, in terms of people maybe being more accepting of it. But I guess there's still that everybody's got to go through it and come to it on their own terms. I guess it's hard to still to have that courage to come forward because you don't really know. You kind of were at the end of your career. You came back with the Nets. Jason Kidd was your coach. You were friends. You had a respect level. If it's a young guy or a guy that's, kind of right in the middle of his career, there still isn't that precedent of somebody at that point in their career yet.
Well, Carl might be.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, Carl, could be in that category. But again, each player is on their own path. And yes, in some ways, our society and the culture of sport, I think, would be ready. And obviously, Carl was able to prove that in the NFL. I think if an NBA player, Major League Baseball player, NHL, the list goes on. If they were to step forward, I think it would be okay. But there's still, in our country, you can see policies that are being written in, you can look no further than Florida with some of the legislation that is happening, some of the rollbacks. And, it's just amazing to see how LGBTQ people are still, being vilified, and, rights are being rolled back. Well, not just for LGBTQ community, but maybe even, coming up with a Supreme Court decision, with this new, with a women's right to choose. So it's interesting to see the fight for civil rights, it isn't just sort of like something that was done in the 60s and like, hey, or with pride parades, we just, roll out. And that's like, no, the fight for civil rights is continuous. And it's so sad, but unfortunately, some people see equality as a threat to them. There are some people who see acceptance and then are actively making plans to undermine that acceptance, to undermine the progress that certain groups and certain people have made. And I can only describe them as people who have hate in their hearts and just absolute ignorance.
Yeah.
And which is why it's important for people to speak up, to stand up, whether you are a member of the community or an ally, but to stay strong and not necessarily be, bullied into silence just for, trying to speak up on diversity, inclusion, acceptance, equality, you name it. Like, the country needs to continue to move forward, not backward.
I just think of the courage it took for you and to think of the things that you used to face on a basketball court, where you said you had no fear of somebody dunking on you or that contact or that physicality and that danger on the court. And yet for so many years, it still took you so long to work up the courage to talk about this. And I would imagine that's why something like the Trevor Project and being able to say to young people, it's okay to have these feelings and to be out front with it and honest with the world. Because I have a physical disability, and it always was something that for years I never wanted to talk about. And then I got the courage to do it, and then you become an example, and people feel better by hearing your story. And you've done that with so many people. I would imagine it, even though it's still hard, even though it's still an ongoing situation, I would imagine it's quite rewarding for you and gives you a little bit of sense of purpose now that your playing days are over.
Yes, it definitely does. And it has sort of led, seamlessly to my position now with the NBA, being an NBA Cares ambassador, going around the world, through our sport, teaching our sport, but then also connecting with different communities. I've met with the LGBTQ community in Angola or in Shanghai, in Rio de Janeiro,
Amazing,
and
right?
all through basketball. And it's amazing to see how, at the end of the day, it's about connection, it's about support, and it's about growing our society, growing our people growing and being safe and free to be who they are.
Yeah, it had to be lonely, right? And now you talk about connecting.
It was. Yeah. It was also very difficult hearing the language in the locker room. I think that was sort of the toughest hurdle for me.
And that would discourage you too from talking about it. Yeah.
Because I'm constantly looking for, okay, if I come out, who's going to be an ally? Like, who's going to have my back when I'm, not in the room, kind of thing. And if you're hearing language, and it goes back to, though, some of the people who I heard use homophobic language were some of my biggest supporters, because there's like a disconnect sometimes with guys with some of the language that they're using, because they've just been taught this language when they were a little kid, like use this language to.
Yeah, it's just words. It's just kind of words to them. It's not meaning.
And they're not understanding the impact of those words to someone like me who's closeted. But it was really eye-opening and just really cool to see the level of support that I received from my NBA and WNBA family, and beyond that, just society and all. I mean, Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, to Oprah Winfrey, to President Barack Obama, like the list goes on and on of people who reached out. And one person in particular that I do want to give a shout out to is Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway. When John Amici came out after he retired, Tim Hardaway had some very negative comments. And to his credit, though, after receiving the backlash, rightfully so, for those comments that he made, he looked himself in the mirror and said, is it me, or do I need to learn, and do I need to grow? So quietly, he started meeting with LGBT groups in South Florida, where he lives, And he really started on one end of it. And so many people in the LGBTQ community know people like this. We have family members who like this, where they start off on one end of the spectrum where they just aren't supportive or, downright ignorant, but then they undergo like a transformation, like a learning process. And then next thing you know, they're walking with you at the Pride Parade because they are now, they get it. Like, it's all about support, and it's about accepting your brother, your sister, your aunt, uncle, nephew, niece, name it, your neighbor for who they are. And I'm so proud. So when I came out, I got a call from Tim, and I didn't know that he had undergone this transformation, that he had undergone this education, and he had nothing but words of support. And I was just like, that was really cool, but also strange. Like, why didn't? Because he did the work in quiet. He wasn't looking to get, But years later, he's walking and marching in a New York City Pride Parade awesome. In the NBA, with the NBA, with his wife and his daughter. And so I thought that was really cool. And I'm just very proud of him for doing that, and very proud that he will be in the Hall of Fame.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. And I would imagine, now your family was very supportive.
Yes.
Your parents, your brother.
Yes.
Because I can imagine when you, again, going back to, I think of those kids that the Trevor Project's trying to help, that I would imagine the first people that you come out to, or the people that are really important to you in your life, it's always heartbreaking to me when I hear stories about people who come out to their parents and it's a very negative situation. And that really, I think, drives people to suicide and things like that. So it's important to know that even if you don't get that support right away, that support is out there. It will exist somehow. Find the people that will support you.
And something that my story helped repair a relationship between a mother and son. I was at a function in Washington, D.C. For DC Pride, and this man walked up to me and he said, I'm a firefighter, and but I have to tell you how your story, his mom was a huge fan of basketball. When he came out to his mom, he was met with rejection. And when his mom, though, saw that this NBA player came out, and she's a huge fan of basketball, that was the impetus. That prompted her to call her son and start repairing that relationship. And she asked for, she said that she was sorry and asked for forgiveness, but she's, seeing that this NBA player has come out and just, seeing the reaction of that. And just so when that firefighter told me that, I'm looking at him like, you are a hero. You're literally running into burning buildings and saving people's lives. And you're dealing with this, with the rejection of your mother. But I'm so happy that my story helped, help repair or lead to the reconciliation between him and his mom. And, but there are many stories of people in the LGBTQ community. We have a saying, there's the family that you have and the family that you choose to have. And it's because some of us, many of us are met with rejection, but we're able to find those safe spaces and safe communities. And that's one of the good things about some social media sometimes, and connections, that you're able to connect with people who will provide that safe space for you to be your true self.
It's not always bad, social media. It can be used for good.
Yes, it can be used for good. Yes,
and I believe that people find themselves sometimes in difficult situations, but it's for a reason. And your reason, you found yourself in a great situation with the Nets and with Jason Kidd all those years, and then it eventually came full circle when he was the coach and brought you back to the Nets. Yeah. And it put you in the right place, and I think set you up to succeed in what you're trying to do now.
Definitely. Yeah, I give a lot of credit in my life to Jason Kidd. Well, first, being my teammate, and then, being my coach, and, so proud of him for the season. I'm not ready to throw dirt quite on Dallas.
Yeah, as we record this, they're down 3-0.
They're down 3-0, but they had a heck of of a season, and is his first year in Dallas, and they're on the up. They're up and coming, and you have a player like Luka Doncic. Always helps.
And also should be noted in keeping with this conversation, though, that this year's winner of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar social consciousness award, I forget what the name exactly is, Reggie Bullock, whose sister was transgender and was murdered. Yes. And he has devoted his life to helping the LGBTQ plus community as well. Yeah,
I've met with Reggie a few times. He's a great guy. I can't say enough good things about him. So proud of him, and just want to say congratulations to him. To get an award, named after, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, someone who walked with Dr. King kind of thing. So it's very proud of Reggie for the work that he's been doing, and congratulations to him.
Well, and Jason Collins, you have an award named after you with the Nets now. It's the Jason Collins Award for Courage and Leadership. Honor someone from the LGBT community and leadership there. I imagine that's been gratifying the last couple of years. Are you involved in how you select the winners and things like that?
No. The Nets, I have to give all credit to the Nets. Obviously they're an incredible organization, but they do all the legwork, and I come in and meet the recipient there, and we've obviously had to tweak things because of the pandemic. But it's good to see that we were all able to come together this year, even with after the Omicron. Well, I guess the first Omicron wave. No, it was just good to be back in the arena. It's great to see people in the organization. I would have loved to practice at that practice facility that they have
with that view.
With that amazing view. You might be a little distracted, or when you're doing a sprint or a ladder or something like that. It would be nice to look over at that nice view and be like, oh, that's a nice view. Now I got to do another down and back.
Or even living in Brooklyn. And I don't know, where did you live when you were with the Nets?
Oh, man, I was in Jersey. I'm all Jersey. Yeah. I don't know. I love Jersey. I'm a Jersey,
I do too. I'm in Jersey right now. Yeah.
But no, it's, I lived in Hackensack, Clifton, Edgewater, North Bergen. I know North Jersey very well. But it'd be very convenient now to live in Brooklyn, and for the guys on the team. So I'm happy for the organization, and hopefully they're able to build around the star players that they have there, and it was a very tough way to see how they got swept. You never want to get swept, especially in the first round of the playoffs. But they have, great pieces. Anytime you got Kevin Durant, you got a great piece to build around. So, So we'll see what they're able to do, and incredible. Everything starts with leadership. So from the owner to the general manager, Josiah, Sean Marks, Steve Nash. They have excellent leadership. Obviously great players. So I'm sure that they will, be back in the playoffs and making a long playoff run.
Well, Jason Collins, I really appreciate you doing this. I know this was, I've kept you an hour and we haven't even really talked about some of the things I want to talk about, but maybe we'll do it again sometime. I knew for the first time, we kind of had a soft opening with this where we were talking more playoffs and getting into the basketball part of it, but this show is going to be hopefully some good conversations like we've had today. And I was thinking about it, and who would be the perfect guy to start this off, and it was you, where you're part of the Nets family, the great history, the best parts of this Nets franchise, and then what you've done and showing the courage that you have in your personal life and what you've done for so many people is exactly what I want to spotlight in this show. So thank you so much for giving us your time, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. And, I love the Brooklyn Nets, and I can't say enough good things about the Nets organization franchise. Wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Always have such a wonderful time talking to Jason Collins. Again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in here. The Voice of the Nets podcast with me, Chris Carrino. During the summer, we're going to come at you every couple of weeks, and then when we get closer to the season, we'll do this weekly. A lot of Nets insiders and other just hopefully interesting people that you'll find and have some intriguing conversations with us. So love you to subscribe and keep tuning in. The Voice of the Nets podcast. I'm Chris Carrino. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.